In 21st century, it's the era of self-learning, right? And a lot of app-based learning as a techno-pedagogical tool is what we are seeing moving around in the ecosystem of education. How differentiated is app-based learning, since you have worked in this area for a long period of time in your experience? How differentiated is it from a learner's perspective and in terms of ease of adoption?
Thank you, Shweta. Good morning, everybody. Real pleasure to be here with you folks and with my distinguished panelists. Let me begin by saying that, this was about 10 years ago, or more than 10 years ago, when I first went into a classroom. And, well, I'd been in a classroom myself, but in a rural school in Punjab, to see how technology could make a difference. And I haven't stopped believing since then that for us especially, technology is not just a great enabler, it's not just interesting, it's not just useful, it's a compulsion. About 4 or 5 months ago, we launched a pilot in a state in the eastern part of the country. And we went into grade 9 across their best government high schools. They're called aspirational schools. And when we assessed the students, these are grade 9 students, and there were 90% of them were at least 4 levels below grade 9. When we assessed the teachers, 70% of them were below proficiency level. Now, in a state which has 50,000 schools, and these are the aspirational schools, just imagine the classroom transaction that's taking place when you have this situation. Now, there's not one silver bullet to solve the problem. There's got to be multiple things done very quickly, but I have to tell you, there is no choice. Technology isn't a choice, it's a compulsion, right? I won't go into the detail, but we implemented technology in those classrooms, and the difference started becoming apparent very quickly. So when you think of apps at home, especially for our 200 million of India 3, as they are now being called, the 3 lower quartiles of our school-going students, I'd keep it simple and say there are 3 reasons why we want these apps to reach them, and why we want these apps to be students to engage with them, and why we want the apps to be successful. Number 1, it's the learning loop. So what you do in class is about 10-20% of your learning. 70-80% happens back at home or somewhere else when you're self-learning. And for a student coming from a first-generation literacy family, the biggest challenge is who's there to help them. And if they have a technology where you can click on a button or press on something and see a meaning or see a translation, and it becomes funner and easier, then you can self-learn. And if you self-learn, you become successful, and you can be assured that this is an absolutely guaranteed way of changing learning outcomes. The second reason, which we all know, is that it allows you to learn at your own pace. So when we see children, we see the data of thousands of students learning on our app. There's bunches of students who are reading repetitively. There are bunches of students who are reading at a particular pace. There are students who stop at certain words. There are students who like to translate the meaning. There are students who like to look at pictures. They learn the way they want to because that's how they need to learn, right? And how will you do that in a classroom? The third is, of course, the context. And in this case, what technology does, it changes the definition of context. See, we see our app, we've got the textbook, and for each chapter we've got a bunch of practice questions or tests. Students who score more than 60% in these tests at home when they practice tend to read more. Why? Because they're closer to their grade textbook. Which means we now have to go into to help those students who are not reading, because even with technology, it's tough, right? So you can make it relevant for their context, right? Or students who like to look at pictures because that's their way of learning, we can use that information and give them contextual learning. I think there's a fourth reason. I think that technology has to become a habit for our underserved, lower income background students to help them equalize. Why should a student in Delhi have access or believe they have access to Khan Academy and not somebody in a remote village somewhere in a district in some eastern part of the country? Why can't a student in Meghalaya have access to a tutor in Bangalore because that tutor gives them something that they can't access locally? Right? So there's no escaping this truth, and we need it now.
Is that post-COVID, we've seen that a large number of apps, like you also said, are available in the market space. What are the driving factors in terms of what kind of leads to better adoption, and what are the challenges that as an app-based learning system provider one might experience to kind of reach out to the masses?
Yeah, there is a very populated world out there of choices, but I do think we should remember that population of choices is significantly biased towards the top 25-50 million students, and that's the reference to ads and brands and the money that the amount of money that we've seen spent on building recall for apps and different brands that cater to about 25, maybe 50 million students is about 100 times more, or maybe 200 times more, or maybe 1,000 times more than what we've seen spent for the balance 200 million students. So I think that when it comes to our bottom three quartiles, the fundamental goals are right now so basic that we don't have to, indulge in rocket science to figure out what is needed. I think that what works, in at least my mind, is an integration into the school system, technology that does not demand significant investment but rides on existing investment, technology that inherently ensures that the teacher has a central role to play, technology that can easily be replicated back away from school for revision and self-learning, technology that has withstood and has demonstrated impact through rigorous testing and measurement. Those are important. And if you look for that, you will find answers coming through relatively quickly. I think the challenge we face is that when it comes to solving the problem that we have in the public education K-12 system, everybody sees of the problem, but we don't solve it with the same urgency that we would solve the problem of a house on fire. We're still using the same systems to buy furniture as we do to buy some of or procure some of these interventions. Now, some of these things are easy to do and some are more difficult, but all have to be done. I think the challenges faced very simply are economical, affordability, accessibility, the internet, maybe electricity and all that. But those to my mind are overplayed to an extent, because I think there is enough social money, whether with the government or with society, to overcome it if we apply ourselves in a coordinated way. I think the second challenge is structural. I mentioned curriculum alignment, measurement, regulation. You can't have apps that are focusing on engagement and number of BAU, DAU without focusing on outcome. Because then you look at why these kids are going there, you will wonder whether that is education. Right? And the third is just behavior change. And behavior change needs investment in helping mind change, mind shift, demonstrating outcomes, making people believe. And for that you need a lot of resource. Most of that is, I wish our t-shirts of the cricket team also had some of that. But that requires money and it's quite tough.
basically that there's very simple challenges like access in terms of a Wi-Fi connection not working. So how do you kind of talk about impact with dealing with?
I think the beauty of technology is that other than human problems of which are complex, and if you take emotion for example, most other logical problems can be solved logically. So when there is no connectivity, you cannot exactly get everything that you're looking for, but you can make technology that doesn't need connectivity operational, and we see that, right? When infrastructure is limited, you can use technology in a very smart way by creating ability to share that infrastructure. So I think the infrastructural issue is a challenge, and it will obviously get solved, but it may get overstated at times. I think we can adapt and find solutions that may not be that brilliant, but are reasonably good.